And we're back with another episode of Unbuffered, where technology meets power, policy, and real talk. But this is a special episode, or maybe just an unusual one. But to paraphrase the great philosopher and musician Gil Scott-Heron, the revolution will not be televised, but an insignificant part of the revolution might be on a podcast today. I'm Sean Gonsalves. I'm the Associate Director for Communications at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance Community Broadband Networks team, and I've taken over host duties this week. How? Why? You say? Well, when I introduce our guest, you'll understand. So let me get right to it. First, we've got Matt Rantanen. Welcome to the program. Matt is let's see. You're the board president for Waskawegan. For 2 decades, you were or are the director of technology for the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association and its Tribal Digital Village initiative.
2.5.
2.5.
Yeah.
You're on like a million boards, like Tribal Broadband at Golden State Net, the FCC's Native Nations Broadband Task Force, the National Congress of American Indians Technology and Telecom Subcommittee, and on and on. Word on the street is he's a cyber warrior for Tribal Broadband. Oh! And he co-founded the Tribal Broadband Bootcamp along with our other guest, Christopher Mitchell. Christopher Mitchell's here. He is Tribal Broadband Bootcamp co-founder. You're serving now as the treasurer, I believe, on the board of Waskawegan. Attempting to. There we go. You were honored by the Public Knowledge with its Internet Protocol Award in 2021. That's it. No big deal. Technically, he's my boss, the director of Community Broadband Networks Initiative, where you let me adopt the baby you birthed, communitynetworks.org. Dare I say the nation's go-to clearinghouse that tracks community-owned networks. Sports photography is your side hustle. I don't know a lot of people know that necessarily. And of course, you're the host of this podcast, Unbuffered. Welcome.
Yes. No, I'm so thrilled to be here and not having had to prep.
First.
Exactly, right? Like he preps, right, Matt?
Yeah, right.
So what I thought we would do in this show is, because there's just a lot of fascinating things going on and some cool stuff coming up, which is to go into the origin story of the Tribal Broadband Bootcamps, talk a little bit about a new resource that we put out that is an unbelievable census of tribal networks across the nation. Talk a little bit about the bigger picture, maybe a little bit of policy and funding stuff, and then we'll close with kind of what the Tribal Broadband Bootcamp model is and kind of like what's coming up. So let's dive into the origin story. And Matt, let me just start with you. So the Tribal Broadband Bootcamp grew really, as I understand it, out of conversations kind of about building around the Internet Society's Indigenous Connectivity Summit. Take us back to that moment in what was it, like 2021?
It was 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
5 years ago. That
5 years.
Talk about like what that spark was and who was in the room at the origin of this.
So, I mean, it really, the genesis was really when we went to Hawaii and had the Indigenous Connectivity Summit. We had on the Big Island, we did, days in classroom, talking head, front of the room, talking through all the specifics and policy and things like that. And then the real kicker was going back over to Oahu and then going to Puhuono Waimanalo and the community, the sovereign community there, and working with their community to deploy a wireless network to bring internet connectivity to their homes for the first time. So
literally people on top of their own roofs installing the wireless.
It was cool. I mean, I've never been in a situation where we've taught how to do that and then didn't actually go do it while somebody shadowed us. We just handed over the tools and they went up on their own roofs and started installing stuff. And that was sort of groundbreaking, I think, in my mind, because it's the first time the community's ever taken over the project. And so I thought that was a shift in, what my experiences for the last at that time, like 20 years with the Tribal Digital Village Network, where we talk to people about it, but then we go build it ourselves. And I think, there was a lot of lessons learned in that one. How to and how not to engage a crowd, how to put them to sleep, how
Yeah,
to avoid
right.
putting them to sleep.
Well, we're actually going to get into some of that. Actually, because I want to draw that out a little bit. But let me bring in Chris real quick and ask. Well, let me just say, so the boot camp's founding philosophy is really about like creating this space where tribes can share experiences with people that are really doing the work, like literally digging in the trenches, and at the same time have like these organic conversations about like the opportunities to learn from each other. How how did you figure out, and Matt, you can join in as well, but how did you figure out, Chris and Matt, um, the format that was like the right one? Like, what did those early boot camps teach you about what tribal broadband practitioners actually really needed?
So I feel like it's worth noting that as we were deciding to do this thing, it started off as a series of conversations. Spencer Sevilla, me, Matt, a couple other people here and there, Sasha Meinrath. And I don't know. I felt like it was one of those things. Like we have ideas, and we're like, "All right, this is cool." In the back of my head, I'm like, "Never gonna happen." Like, who's gonna give us some money? How are we actually gonna do this thing? Like, just like the legit. I've never run an
Who has
event
the
before.
time? Yeah.
Yeah, like exactly. Like, oh yeah, with what time? But like, it was an idea we thought would be really valuable. So we're playing with it, and Mark Buell at Internet Society says this is valuable. We're gonna do it, and we're
We'll pay
gonna
for it. Yeah.
yeah, they're gonna pay for it. And so I feel like they called our bluff, and we started putting together like what we learned. Matt and I really got to know each other in a series of events, many of them the same event every year, which was like run by David Eisenberg. David Eisenberg did
Freedom to connect.
Freedom to Connect, thanks, among other events that were just very well put together events. So Matt and I have a high standard, and we're like, we're gonna have this event. But really, it was kind of like we're going to get people together, we're going to put them in the room, and magic will happen. It was the underwear gnomes from South Park, but it worked. Like stage 2 was literally a question mark. We had some ideas what we wanted to do. We knew what we did not want to do. We avoided that, and we had magical people that joined. I mean, the people that were there were the right people, and it gave us confidence to make sure that we were always having the right people in the room who wanted to give, who weren't trying to build like a kingdom that they could defend and then like a bureaucracy that they would not share with others, but people that wanted to share knowledge and build stuff together. And that is really the majority of our success, I think. And then we've imposed other things we've learned along the way.
Yeah, that's exactly true. I mean, we've had some really great examples over the years of really prime learning spaces and interactive spaces where we had the opportunity to, just engage, participants, get into deep conversations, have long break times where we could carry off a conversation out of the room, over wonderful food, good atmosphere. So Chris and I learned really well from those experiences. The Indigenous Connectivity Summit showed us some key things that were valuable to bring to the communities. And then it really was just really kind of our gut on like, how to order it. Chris is good with an agenda, how to kind of keep the workflow going,
Yeah.
how to make sure we build in enough time for people to engage each other, and how to kind of break the ice, get people talking. And surprisingly, that very, very first event went off like far better than planned. And the end result was tears of happiness and tears of I'm not doing this by myself, and like hugs and camaraderie that was just organic. And it, you couldn't have planned that part of it at all.
Now, before we get into like the like sort of the broader picture of like tribal networks across the country and the census and this resource that's new out, I want you guys to paint a bit of a picture though, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the structure of the boot camp later in the program. But just give, for folks that may not be familiar, and I've been fortunate enough to have gone to several of the broadband boot camps, give a little.
You got older at one of them.
Was that?
You got older at one of them.
Exactly. I got older at one of them. You know what I mean? It was a beautiful thing. Esther saying happy birthday. It was beautiful.
Yeah, that was cool.
But like, so paint a little bit of a picture though for our audience about what happens at these boot camps? Like, don't go into like every aspect, but just give a sort of an overview of the several days that you spend together and kind of what that looks like, and how often and where.
I'll just go quick and then you can fill in, Chris. One of the most obvious things that happens is everybody shows up and goes, "Wait a minute, this isn't a conference." And it's like, I'm not experienced in this space. This is truly a boot camp. We're on the ground, we're in the dirt, we're in a tent, it's hot or it's cold, and we're having to experience the elements. This is a different atmosphere that I'm used to learning in, and it turns on a different sense of responsibility, I think, within people. They're like, wow, I'm in a new environment. I better be paying attention and figure out what's going on. It's kind of cool. So we bring them into an environment, and then engage them full blast all day, provide them tons of snackses, and make sure they're happy, and provide good content, and then just enforce the engagement with each other, and organically we just get this great result.
Yeah, because of partners like Merit, and now with several of the tribes that have long operated networks, and I'm always afraid of forgetting some, but like folks like Mohawk, Tanoatam, Hoopa Valley, there's many tribes that have helped out in Gila River, and that have contributed their own, like their people, personnel, equipment. So we actually have a working fiber network wherever we are. That might be in a casino ballroom if we're on reservation. It might be in a community center on reservation. About, I don't know, between a third and a half of them have been at Matt's Ranch, where we have a broadband playground now that is, I mean, literally have, I don't know, 5 or 6 different legs of fiber, quarter mile of conduit, and more than that now even buried. We have an aerial area that the Anza Electric has put in utility poles, showed us how that works. Wireless tower, all kinds of things that are the real world with real tools, and we build real networks that really transmit data. Calix has been a partner that has allowed us to have an E7, which is like the brains of a passive optical network. And so we have a splitter. We can literally show people how to turn on devices, turn them off, and manage them. We do all of that sort of stuff. We cut a live network and then have a technician splice it back together. But then we also go into digital equity with DaVita, and DaVita making sure that we're talking about what happens when the network is lit up or when the wireless is working, making sure that people, how do they get devices? How do they get training? Where do they go to have their questions answered and things like that? So trying to bring together people that are doing this work to meet other people. And now the people who are attending, the last thing I'll say is like some of them are like a lawyer from the tribe, tribal leadership, people that are working in outside plant, people that are working on the phones on the inside, administrators, people from the library system or the education system, people that are just trying to figure out how does all this come together and what do I need to know to make sure that the people on my reservation or, in the region that I'm in are well connected.
Right. I mean, my impression, having been to a few, is that, kind of to Matt's point about it not being like, oh, this isn't like a conference, is like how hands-on it is. It's incredibly hands-on. I mean, just the times that I was there, I mean, like doing crimping and
splicing.
And
That's the thing.
splicing and having different stations where you're doing these kind of things. And then, even at one point at Matt's was, I guess, about a year or so ago, we rolled out the tractor and, cut a fiber line, and then folks had to fix it. I mean, so it's super hands-on. And I thought also, Matt, you kind of undersold the snacks, because I would say it's a little bit more
snacks and any manner of hydration. We want people to stay hydrated.
Yeah, exactly.
We do cater we responsibly cater it.
That's right.
Put it that way.
Right. When we're on res, we always try to make sure that like it's local caterers. We try to make sure the money's staying local. When we're at Matt's, we've had some caterers that were local. They've actually moved away, but they come back to keep catering this event. They enjoy it. We love it. And so we have great folks. And then, Sarah there on the ranch is often running to pick up our lunches. Because when you're in the middle of the desert, it's not easy to find lunch, it turns out.
And I would say you'll be full and your palate will be pleased. Now, running parallel to these tribal broadband boot camps is really a movement across Indian country to expand internet connectivity. And that's so I want to transition a little bit, and Chris, I'm going to come to you on this census that Jessica, our senior researcher, has put together. It's incredible. I mean, so we've got this updated 2026 census of tribal internet networks. And for me, the headline is sort of like finding that like the number of active networks has doubled since 2020. I mean, that's amazing. Uh, what do you think is driving that surge? And as you talk a little bit about the census and yeah, what do you think is driving that surge as you talk a little bit about the census?
Well, I do want to say this is remarkable. Calling it a census undersells it. This
It does.
is a one document long, beautiful, like beautifully presented explanation of what's happened in Indian country on internet access for the past 30 years. And then it ends with this census. So, and it builds on the work started by H Trossel, for people who remember, who worked on our team for a long time and continues to do good research. So this is such a great culmination of this all. So I mean, I
And
think,
probably also helps. It also builds on. We should probably mention Revity, who did some work in
yeah.
this area as
Yeah,
well.
oh yeah, yeah. But in the interim between Jess and H was Revati, who did really great work, and now doing work at Benton. Thank you. Just struggling. It's Friday afternoon as we're recording this.
It is indeed.
Um, so, but the thing that I'll tell you that I'll never forget is that there is a lot of inspiration in Indian country. There's just a lot of folks who are recognizing that they don't need to wait for some person off res to come do this, and they don't need to wait for AT&T. They don't need to wait for the local wireless guy who may not be familiar with the local rules, regulations, and culture. They can do it, and they can take a major step towards digital sovereignty by doing it. There's so many good examples now. I think that's what's creating it. It's the energy on the res that is pushing this and leading it. Now, the federal government has also helped, and so I'll just say that quick. The federal government just has documented how it has done some things that are boneheaded and step back here and there, but it's really done some great things in terms of making money available directly to the reservation, to the tribal government, not forcing them to go through them. It's made sure that the sovereignty is recognized. And so, there's a variety of forces that are acting together on it, is what I'd say. But, Matt's lived it for 25 years. So.
Yeah,
Right.
and so I reviewed the census this morning, and it's a great document. I think it's really going to help folks better understand what's happening in Indian country, specifically in regions and areas that they want to know more about. And by the numbers that I was reading, it looks like we're actively headed towards 200 networks out of the
Right.
576 nations,
Right.
which is sort of a monumental event. And the federal government has injected some dollars to the tune of about $3 billion, give or take, and through the work at the National Congress of American Indians that I've done, that Jeffrey Blackwell has done, through the Tech and Telecom Subcommittee there, the advocacy we've done in that space, along with other partners throughout Indian country, to sort of force the hand of the government to provide dollars directly in the hands of the tribes,
Yeah.
rather than going to a state, rather than going to a carrier, go directly to the tribes who know how to serve the tribe best. So I think, it's not too far back in history yet that we can't also mention COVID, where a lot of the folks that worked off of reservation at a job when COVID hit and everybody was at home restricted, they went home and lost their job because they didn't have internet to be able to continue their work telecommuting. Those coworkers that they had that went to their suburb neighborhood that had internet kept their jobs. So it was a real eye opener. We already knew we didn't have internet in reservation space, but it was a real eye opener that like there was yet another big hit to be taken by not having that in place. So it was very much a catalyst to get things moving. A lot of champions showed up during that timeline within the communities that embraced broadband and sort of drove it internally at each of the reservations, drove it up through the government of the tribe, and forced it to be a priority.
Yeah. Now, I was going to ask you actually, like, what does like this pipeline like tell us about like where tribal broadband is heading like over the next 5 years? But you pointed at it. I mean, 200 networks is significant. like with 90 active, there's like 50 more in like with funding to build, and then there's 60 or so, I think, about
Looking, yeah.
in the prospective stages. So now the census frames tribal broadband, and I want you guys to talk about this, not just kind of like as like an infrastructure story, but as a real exercise in network sovereignty. So like, what does that mean in practice? Like, how does it shape the way and I should say, what does it mean in practice, and how does it shape the way the boot camps are designed?
So, there's a big movement, especially in data sovereignty, right? So the concern of others getting access to proprietary and sovereign data, like enrollment records, financial records of tribes, different information like that. Um, and so, the focus initially was on data, but the reality is, the ownership and operation of the system that moves your data around, from point to point, where you house your data, where that lives, who controls it, and then the rights that data has when it is from a sovereign nation. The argument is made that it does not matter if data from a tribe lives on an Amazon AWS server. It should have inherent sovereign rights because it is sovereign. Remember the old movies in like the 80s and 90s where they were like, I have diplomatic immunity. My
Mm,
diplomatic pouch cannot be touched.
mm,
It's very similar to sovereign data,
that's a
right?
good analogy.
That is the correlation there. And so tribes are trying to make sure that there is language, there is legal precedent, there is structure to be able to say that sovereign data is sovereign data. Does not matter where it lives. It retains that authority, and then controlling those networks that move that data around, that encrypt that data, that house that data, gives you peace of mind and as well as control of the sovereignty.
Now, Chris, you want to like weigh in on kind of like network sovereignty and what and specifically, how does that inform the boot camps and how they're designed?
Yeah, this is something that I'm still learning a lot about. I mean, I've been I've been admiring the work that Matt had done for a long time. I've been admiring the work that others had done. Valerie Fasthorse. It took me 5 years to get an interview with her. Finally, Matt helped out with that. Finally, but I'm nowhere near an expert on Indian country, and the way that I think about it, and I think it's useful to note that we try to think about this very clearly, not just in terms of the boot camps, but also this wider question, because Matt and a few other people, myself and Todd Hoskins, created Waskawiwan. Now, Matt and Todd did all the hard work, but Matt, I think you just want to briefly describe what Waskawiwan is because it plays into my answer.
Sure. Waskawiwan, the word is Cree, which is I am a descendant of, and it is the act of being active or in motion, which we are very much active and in motion in this space. I can't tell you how many decades I sat around listening to people talking about the problem and not building solutions, right? So we're about building solutions, solving the problem, not talking about the problem. So Waskawiwan was created to really give a parent umbrella to the boot camps and other efforts that we'll be migrating into in the future. A funding mechanism, a nonprofit that allows us to align with foundations and things like that, and that the mission is aligned with the products that we are producing, rather than getting fiscal sponsor here, fiscal sponsor there, where you're aligned for a short period of time and then you stray and you maybe are very good at bringing in money, the parent's not good at bringing in money, then you have issues. I mean, there's a lot of things like that just complications where, you know what, let's just do a nonprofit that is aligned with this mission and let's just go with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we wouldn't be here without the work of the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. Myself, my time.
Hmm.
I did a lot of it in personal time, but also some of it on ILSR's time.
That's right.
And so it's important. But it was important to us that ILSR didn't own it, and that it is rooted in Indian country on a board that is mostly made up of enrolled members of tribes. And so to get back to your question, which I don't remember the question as well as I remember the answer, but this question of like what are we doing here? Like, I do feel like for me, it is this, and I remember talking with Mikhail Sundust about this at Tahanatham when we were down there for them hosting an event, is that like, I think there's a sense that that native peoples are not technologically savvy, and that's crap. Like, I mean, like whether it's irrigation is an obvious one, but I mean, if anything, native peoples have proven that for thousands of years they've used technology appropriately in their area, sustainably. That's why they're still there. And
Yes.
so, what do I think about? I think that like as this new information technology kind of moves across planet Earth and is developed by in different ways, the goal is that these sovereign nations are able to interact with technology on their terms, and they don't have terms imposed on them. And that's how I kind of think about it. You know, in terms of how we structure what we're doing and everything else, is that we have this idea that that everyone has something to learn, everyone has something to teach, and so it's really fundamentally about making sure that people are sharing tools that they've figured out and discovering new tools together, and just sharing that knowledge at our events.
Quick correction or course correct.
Mm.
Mikhail Sundas, a Gila River Indian
Gila River.
community member, was attending at Tahana Atum, but then also did host us at the Gila River
That's
Indian
right. I was
community.
that was one of the boot camps that that I attended. It was amazing. And the work that they and just, you know, and of course, even their network is, I think, at least at that time, was getting ready to, or had been starting to serve folks outside of the reservation as well. I mean, so
Yeah, GRTI has done a wonderful job. The Gila River folks, that technology is great, and they've put a lot of money into digital equity to make sure people can really use it, get their questions answered. It's a real model.
now one of the things that kind of caught my eye about with the census was like things like highlighting the Morongo Band of Mission Indians,
Yeah.
as an example of like why this work is so important. I mean, waiting 8 years for, I think it was Verizon, to like bring service to the, you know, the reservation, even after they had gotten funding to do it. Like, how can you
Yeah.
guys kind of talk to like how common that is, and
Well,
what that
it's
tells
really
us about why community ownership matters?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate in that case. They're just they border Interstate 10. So
Mm,
from Los Angeles to Phoenix, they border one of the biggest corridors in, in the Southern California to, to the southern states, which has fiber running down it. So it's not like there was no resources there to actually deploy. It was just to get engaged with a carrier, an ISP that would actually serve their community because in every situation, the tribe does not have enough
mm,
homes to
mhm,
justify building infrastructure to the region. They would never recover the middle mile cost
mm,
in the long run to build to the number of homes that are on each reservation. So there has to be some sort of subsidy or offset to that upfront cost to get them there. In the case of Morongo, they were right next to the freeway where the assets were. So in that case, it's really like the ISP or the carrier of choice in the region just chooses not to serve them. And it took a long time and probably some political pressure to get that to happen.
Yeah,
now go
and
ahead,
I
go
would say that you asked how often that happens. I mean, I would say there's a lot of different scenarios that we
ahead.
see, and in some cases, good relationships. I mean, I feel like the ones that are really bad relationships with outside telecom carriers are the ones that you sort of think about more. But like, there's certainly cases of like whether it's a local or a national telecom company that's based off reservation,
Right.
it's a hard business, and
Yeah.
for them, their perspective is like they're going to make their money regardless of whether the reservation is served, and they don't want to deal with interacting with a new set of laws and different culture and having respect for tribal leadership, and so, you know, and that's not true of everyone, but like this is why we've seen this movement for the tribes to serve themselves, because in too many cases it is not really realistic to think that you're going to get great service from someone who's not rooted in that community.
Yeah,
That's
and
right.
when I hear you talk about good relations, and Matt mentioned about the middle mile, I mean, I think about, and I don't want to, you know, I don't know all of the details like you do, and certainly not like Hoopa Valley, but it seems like that's kind of an example of where they're working with the state on some
Yeah.
middle mile stuff, and really is like a first of its kind of arrangement.
Yeah, it's first in history that a tribe's building infrastructure for the state of California. The Hoopa Valley tribe, the Yurok tribe, the Shumash tribe, the Karuk tribe, and the Talawadini Nation are all building sections of the infrastructure for the over 8,000 miles of middle mile that California is currently building. So they're joint build partners with the state of California. And, I think this might be the future. This might be the future in that tribes become or they have grown businesses on their reservations to the point where they are scalable to go off reservation in a multitude of capacities, right? Whether that is to serve last mile down the road or that is to build middle mile infrastructure for the state that they happen to be in, There's a variety of things that now they are becoming the experts specifically in their region, managing operations and maintenance on those routes because they're local, regionally placed with expertise. I mean, there's a variety of things that are happening now that we have not seen ever.
Now, let's just spend just a couple of quick minutes before we talk a little bit more specifically about the boot camp model, with just to tease out a couple of the policy and funding stuff that's kind of a part of all of this matrix here, which is, so as I understand it, so the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program is sort of like, one of the central funding, federal funding programs that are, helping tribes to build out. Now, the demand though was like way higher than the needs. I mean, I think there were like $9 billion of like applications, but there's only $2 billion in the pot. So there's,
and that's been spent at this point. I mean, there's some money left over. It's deeply frustrating that actually the Trump administration pulled the rug out from several tribes that have been told, not just ones that have been working toward receiving the money, but they had been told they had received the grant after putting in tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars, tens, hundreds of hours of work. And that money's just sitting there as we wait for the Trump administration to quote unquote streamline it, which I don't know, a lot of us don't really expect any real benefit. We expect the rules to change in ways that favor DC, not in DC and the friends of the Trump administration, not in ways that will benefit the tribes. But most of that money, the $2 billion, which turned into $3 billion, that was spent, and is like Hoopa Valley, for instance, is nearly done with their build with that money. So that is in the past tense for a lot of it. I don't know if it's most.
And Chris, what would you say? Given the current like political environment, how realistic would you say it is that, or that funding can be retained, and like what are like the levers that advocates like have?
I'm deeply concerned that we will see this NTIA when it comes to the BEAD dollars. There's a dynamic that we have not written about because we're still trying to like actually figure out what all the evidence is. But it seems like there's a dynamic in which, we do know that many of the highest cost locations to build to are on reservation, right? For reasons that we've talked about, high middle mile costs, very rural area, not a population density that can support the network on its own necessarily over time. And the Trump administration wants to turn all of that into satellite connections. Now, tribes being sovereign have a say in this and what technology is used on their land, and they've been resistant. And I think a lot of us are afraid that the money will just go away rather than being used in the way that the tribal nation wants.
Right.
Yeah, we're concerned. We're concerned that the previous iterations of this funding was able to build out, infrastructure, underground fiber, aerial fiber, and a combination of wireless and things. And this is all being pushed towards, low Earth orbit satellite, which is not a solution for all. And it is probably going to go away from actually building serious like infrastructure for the future. So speculation, but speculation with some information from some, insiders and some people that have been in the space and that are very worried as well.
Now, just as a quick little side note. So, because I know like in the census, it talks about how like the 2022 E-rate rule change that like extended eligibility for like tribal libraries and have you, like, I know that was a big deal for the Pueblo Jemez, I think, but like you were part of that fight, Matt. Just talk a little bit about what it took to get there and like what it means for communities on the ground.
Matt's hair was measurably shorter when you started this fight.
Way less gray. Full disclosure, I'm a recovering graphic designer, and I created a brochure, and the title of the brochure was ... and tribal communities. In 2002, I went to Washington, D.C. with my then counterpart, Michael Peralta, and we went to all of our senators, all of our congresspersons for California, and then the Federal Communications Commission, and said, there's no language that allows tribes to self-designate or be a part of the E-rate program. And why not and tribal communities? That's a simple change. Their concern was that if they opened up the rulemaking during the administration we were in there, which was a Bush president, we would lose the program entirely. So we became an exception to the rule. And the exception to the rule was you had to make a relationship with your state librarian. The state librarian had to identify that your libraries were eligible for LSTA funding, library sciences technology, and then that gave you the ability to apply for E-rate. So we were awarded the E-rate funding. We taught as many tribes as possible how to work with their tribal or their state librarian to get that letter of authenticity, um, and then to navigate a workaround to be able to get E-rate funding. And a lot of tribes were able to navigate and get E-rate funding. So fast forward 21 years or 20 and a half years later, we finally have the rulemaking that allows tribes to self-designate their entities.
And as I understand it, and Chris, you correct me if I'm wrong, but that was crucial, wasn't it, for the Pueblo of Jemez? I mean, I think that was what helped build their backbone, and because they were smart enough to know what they were doing, they were able to use sort of parlay that into helping them set up for their fiber to the home project that they're.
Yeah, I mean, that was my understanding. Matt was there for a lot more of it than I was, but many pueblos working together, different entities to make sure they were connecting those facilities that were eligible for E-rate, and then during that construction project to put an extra fiber on their dime that the pueblos paid for themselves that could then be used for other uses that are not tied into E-rate. That's a real nice feature of that program, and so that was essential to making the cost of now connecting everyone at Jemez and in many other pueblos to be affordable. So, it still took a lot of work. And I mean, I was literally just talking with Angie at Jemez this week, and as they're going through final paperwork on some of the other things. And so, for a lot of these programs, it's like, oh, we could connect this number of people, but there's still an issue, right? There's still a challenge. And then once the network is available to everyone, all right, well, do we have devices for everyone? And do we have the training? And in Jemez, they have their training that they've developed in Toa, their own language, which is really special that they've gone so far. And it really helps with their adoption rates because they can speak with elders without having to switch over to English and things like that.
Now, Jemez is so fresh in my mind because the last boot camp that I went to at Matt's ranch was when they were a prominent part of that, and got a chance to listen. It's just an incredible group of people, and the workforce training that they're doing. I mean, it's just amazing. Angie and her whole crew of folks that she brought there was amazing. So let's go back before we get out of here. Let's just go back to the boot camp for a minute, because now this is something that I should know the answer to, but I was probably busy like stuffing my face with snacks to know the answer to this. But so the boot camp covers both wireless and fiber optic training. And
Yes.
every event is adjusted to like the experiences of the hosting tribe and kind of like the interest of the participants. How do you figure out what each cohort needs for that?
That's a great question. So some of it's known ahead, just from the experiences that I have working with their communities or working around the advocacy that I've done with some of those tribes. Some of it we get on an intake form when they apply to show interest in the boot camp and want to attend the boot camp. And then a lot of times, and this is Chris's favorite thing, is the survey. Every night we have a survey, and we will actually adjust on the fly from Monday night to Tuesday night to Wednesday, and we will change programming or add content or add time to be able to drill deeper into a subject, or to pull away from wireless and focus on fiber, because the community we're in is really fiber focused and most of the attendees are really fiber focused. We can switch gears like that. And so Chris has figured out how to have a flexible enough agenda schedule to be able to tweak as we move.
Now, I would say that if you look up the word iterative in the dictionary, there's a picture of Chris right next to or right under the definition.
I was gonna say that's nicer than my picture showing up under con man, which I feel like there's a lot of this that's just confidence, which is
there's another couple of words you show up next to too.
Yeah.
But I do think that like some of this is like, certainly we have a lot of meetings, and one of the reasons we're able to do this is because my brain is broken in a couple of ways. One is where I'm always like, oh, we could probably work this out. It'll take like 4 meetings and we'll have this event. It'll be great. It's 12 meetings later. It's like, wait, we still haven't figured this other thing out. We never even thought about this thing. You learn a lot about the communities. Like, I mean, we were up in Alaska for the first time in Bristol Bay, working with the Bristol Bay Native Association, and learned just so much in just meetings with them about what it's like up there, talking with a local ISP, So you start to get a sense of that sort of a thing. But there's
So,
this confidence angle, which is
mm,
just that, like, if you have a group of people that are together, there's a
mhm,
peer pressure. And
mhm,
there's a sense like if you have a person in the front of the room that is like, it makes sense to transition from this topic to the next topic.
right.
And it makes sense to, like, to steer the conversation in this direction. And like, we're going to run this event, switching among these stations this way. I think it goes differently if you have a person that doesn't have confidence. And I'm up there and I'm like, this works. We do it this way. And people are like, okay, I guess it works. And I'm just in my head, I'm freaking out, like, so
So,
hoping it all holds together.
like, just to elaborate a little bit, and like, so just to ask what would you say is like surprised you the most about what people come in like wanting to learn?
You know,
Well, I got an example,
yeah, go ahead.
like going back to Hemis and Angie and her team. They actually were very concerned that they had a consultant um, coach them on what equipment to purchase for fiber
Mm,
splicing to go out and do their whole entire network, right? And so they had purchased all this equipment sight unseen based on a recommendation. That person that recommended is not an expert in it, other than giving advice, doesn't know how to operate the gear, and they didn't know how to operate their own gear. So we told them to bring it to the boot camp. And so they brought all their gear to the boot camp. And in the cycle of one boot camp, they were able to learn their fiber splicing equipment, get it dialed into the point where they are now teaching that. So that was a big kind of a shift and we were like, well, I guess we can be the people to show you how to use your gear. And then, we're going to take advantage of you once you learn it, because, you can teach others.
So let's go, Chris. I'm gonna. You can probably wrap your answer into this because bring this thing in for a landing here in a few moments here. But kind of like just thinking about like looking ahead, and I was interested to you, Chris, from ILSR's vantage point, tracking community broadband networks across the country. What makes the tribal broadband movement, for lack of a better term, distinct from other community broadband efforts, would you say?
I think the challenges that it faces, I mean, it's not easy for a municipality, let's just say like a city in Iowa, to decide to build a network, but there's a process, there's a stability, there's a sense of how to approach capital markets because they have authority to bond. And then you take that into Indian country where there's usually less in terms of capital available. They're not able to borrow because the land is held in trust by the federal government. They can't just access the same sort of financial instruments that a municipality can. You have potential changes in leadership that come with any community where there's a lot of hardship and challenges. Things can so you have local politics
Mm,
plus the local politics potentially of communities under hardship,
mm,
and so you just have additional challenges. But on the other hand, you have the sense of people are used to like figuring things out and they're not as intimidated by it to be like, okay, I got to figure out how this thing works. I got to, we got to make it work. We're going to do that. And I don't want to. I always hate feeling like I'm going too Pollyanna-ish on this, but like there are local politics that are crushing. We've seen corruption in cities, seen corruption in tribal governments, seen sexism. Like it's just
mm.
you see it in industry, you see it in government, you see it on the reservation. Like it's frustrating, and but it's a reminder that like we're all deeply flawed as human beings. I feel like, and just you
Mhm.
see that across as you work, and it does actually destroy stereotypes the more you work with different groups of folks.
And what do you
I'd say
think? Yeah,
just give
go
me
ahead,
one
Brett.
second, Sean. We have a culture at the boot camps that tries to break down some of that, historical, stereotypical things that happen. So the sexism thing doesn't exist in our boot camps. It's a safe environment for
Yeah,
anyone
just to be
at
clear,
any
like
level.
Matt and I are two guys talking to another guy, being like, "Yeah, we don't have any sexism." Matt and I go out of our way. This is incredibly important to us to make it clear that we want to hear about any of this. And if they don't want to tell us, there are other people they can
Mhm.
talk to Jess. Like there's a number of women that would be available. There's we try to make sure they could send a text. And I feel confident in saying that this is one of the most egalitarian experiences one can experience. For people who can't see, Matt is incredibly physically intimidating. And Matt and I are both the kind of people that, like, if we're confronted with a threat, we tend to like accelerate rather than decelerate. And so we have not had any issues. Like people that would like to create a problem just decide they'd rather create a problem somewhere else if they come across us. And
That's right.
it's been nice.
But it's also a level of like, expertise too. So and Chris says this a lot about the boot camps, and I continue to try to remember this as I'm talking about them without him. And that is, it is a confidence builder. These boot camps are confidence building. So you're coming in with a knowledge level that may be very, very low, and you're leaving maybe not with the expert level, grip on everything, but you have a confidence that you can understand and build more to what you're doing. It's raised your level of aptitude and sort of engagement, and that's another part of the safe environment that we're speaking of, is that like there is no dumb question, there is no pecking order, there is no like, oh, he's an expert, I don't want, he knows too much kind of a thing. There's none of that. Everything is collaborative and everybody's working together and it's very supportive.
Well, let's I think close it by talking about what's coming up. It's just funny. I'm just thinking about Chris saying Matt's kind of a physically intimidating person. It's almost like reminds me of Chewbacca or something like that.
Yes, maybe. Maybe.
Anyway,
maybe Matt's right. Yeah, he just looked at him.
Yeah, we are on a podcast where I can show you. Oh, who's that?
Oh, there it is. There it is. We won't ask you to make the Chewbacca sound.
That is my alter ego.
They'll have to go to a broadband boot camp to hear it live and in person.
Exactly.
Now, so let's just close out with, so the next Tribal Broadband Boot Camp is coming up, I think, the week of June 22nd.
I think this might actually literally be airing while
you're there, exactly. And it's a big one. It's the 5-year anniversary event, which means that it's back at Rantanen Town Ranch. And even if I told listeners where it was in the county in California, you wouldn't be able to find it. It's out there, and it's beautiful. It's secluded. And it's where it all really started, and folks will be back there for the 5th anniversary. So like, why don't you two, before we head out of here, kind of give us a picture of what people can expect and how like people that might want to get involved in these things in the future, like find out more about it.
Yeah, let me start with it, and let me just say that I'm just gonna go straight out and just offer a heap of praise onto Matt. Like, there is a dynamic that we've seen, which is that like Indian country gets a bunch of money for broadband, and a bunch of people are like, let's go figure out how to get that money. Like I run a business, and I'm gonna give them a little bit of benefit. I'm gonna figure out how to take that money. And like Matt and I have been committed. We've been successful in our life, and we're trying to figure out, we've run this as a nonprofit. We try to raise all the money from philanthropy, so we're not taking money out of Indian country, and to do this work. Matt has done most of the work. In fact, he took time out today of working outside on his own time for the building the central office that we're launching for the first time here coming up. Matt has done significant amounts of trenching with his wife, Sarah, who's also put in a shocking amount of physical labor to be able to have these events ready for people. And so the first thing to understand, that it doesn't just happen. Like, it is because Matt, Sarah, a few other people that have volunteered their time or worked, for like well less than they deserve to be able to make stuff happen. And so it is just an event that it is hard to replicate, because you don't find people that want to put that kind of time in always.
That's right. And so this time around, we're going to have, like Chris said, it is the introduction of a central office. So the central aspect of an internet network where everything starts from and then builds out from. We are going to have.
I mean, let's just be clear. It used to be like in a room that you have as like a movie theater,
right? Yes.
And now is rather than having people go into that garage, there's a half a trailer, and it has. I mean, Matt Peterson, who donated a ton of his time and effort, has built. We're running on direct current. It's like an actual working CO. I mean, like, it's not like a pretend. It doesn't have real air conditioning, but it's a real CO in all other regards.
Yeah, and we have a horizontal boring demo. We have blowing fiber, pulling fiber, pushing fiber demo. We're going to have another aerial demo. So we have sort of covering all the bases of this. We're going to have wireless setup demo, tower climbing, a host of other things. So, it's a little bit longer event because it's the 5-year anniversary. We've got a little bit more people than we normally take in, where we've got it open for 100. I think we're creeping up close to it. And it'll be a very, very hands-on, very sort of focused stations where you'll get to learn different aspects of an internet network that is, crucial to you going out to manage that yourself. And we'll also have a bunch of experts from Indian country that have components of those things that we've built here, that they can speak to professionally and educate folks on, and compare and contrast the different versions of things that have been made. We did one, bootstrapping it, nickel and diming it, and it's the lower end version of a CO. And we're about to go to the Hoopa Valley tribe for our second time, them hosting a Tribal Broadband Bootcamp, and see an actual $700,000, $800,000 facility that has been put into place. I actually got to see video of it 2 days ago, and it's phenomenal. But there is economies of scale, and where you can work from, and examples of where you can start and where you can end up.
And there will be snacks.
There will be
last thing, and we're out of here. Folks that might be interested in this, who haven't been involved before, how do they find out more? How do they get involved?
TribalBroadbandBootcamp.org.
TribalBroadbandBootcamp.org.
Check out the YouTube page. Soon you'll have we'll have a video up there. We have several videos up there with people's experiences. Not as many as there should be, because that's something that just keeps getting neglected. But soon there will be a 5-year retrospective video that's being worked on. We've seen some of the clips from it. It's fun because it kicks from Matt in the present day to Matt 5 years ago when he had a black mustache.
Yeah, right. I was a furry beast. So it's going to be kind of cool. It's going to show a little bit of history. But yeah, the resources are out there. We're developing new resources every day. We're gathering up information. I mean, there's the census, there's all these different things that we're working to just kind of collaboratively make this a better space for Indian country to be able to build out their broadband networks.
Well, I want to thank our listeners and our viewers for tuning into this rogue episode of Unbuffered. These guys, if you've got complaints, email them, and they'll be at the boot camp all week, and we can get to them. No, really, thanks for tuning in. This was a really fun episode. The Tribal Broadband Bootcamps are amazing. Thank you both, Chris and Matt, for joining us on this episode of Unbuffered.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Unbuffered podcast. We have transcripts for this and other episodes available at ilsr.org/podcast. While you're there, check out our other podcasts from ILSR, including Building Local Power, Local Energy Rules, and the Composting for Community podcast. Email us at podcast@communitynets.org with your ideas for the show. Follow us on Blue Sky. Our handle is @CommunityNets. You can catch the latest research from all of our initiatives by subscribing to our monthly newsletter at ilsr.org. While you're there, please take a moment to donate. Your support in any amount helps keep us going. Unbuffered is produced by Christopher Mitchell, with editing provided by me, Jordan Pittman. Until next time, thanks for listening.